employees or managers through our work right across the globe in pretty much every country of the world. We've been doing a lot for 25 years, but you can see in the middle here, igniting growth mindsets in organizations as being one of our big pushes, particularly in the last decade. We embedded neuroscience into leadership. We massively helped reinvent performance management. We've brought new science to DEI, and we've really cracked the code on culture change as well. But growth mindset is something we've been passionate about for about a decade. It started as sort of an interesting idea, and it became really central to our work over some time. But even before growth mindset, we've had this approach to change that's about priorities, habits, and systems. This has been with us even longer. Priorities, habits, and systems is how we think about any kind of change. And growth mindset's a really critical change. I think it's one of the big three right now that leaders need to have. Growth mindset, psych safety, and accountability are probably the three kind of tripods of great leadership today in a company that needs to adapt. And you got to really start with growth mindset, I think, as you're rolling this out. So making growth mindset a priority, but then really building the habits and installing the systems, that's how you do this. And as you'll hear from probably, he's been working at all three levels across his organization, priorities, habits, and systems. So what is this idea? It's actually an idea that's been around a long time. In the 1980s, it was defined by academics, and they started studying entity and incremental theory. Probably heard of Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. She brought this to schools. We coined the term organizational growth mindset, started studying that, and wrote the first and still only major paper on this. And we've now become the leading global practitioner in organizations around this space. And we've written a number of research reports and done quite a bit of research in this space, looking at how it really works in organizations. If you're a corporate member, you have access to all of this. And then we've had a lot of practice out there building growth mindset across organizations as diverse as Procter & Gamble and Pepsi and Cigna and many others, and of course Terumo as well. So that's a little bit of background to sort of where we got here. What is growth mindset itself? It's really an ability to notice a fixed mindset and shift it to a growth mindset in one way. So growth mindset is really about noticing when you're saying something like, I'm not really an AI person. I'm more of a normal tech person, or I'm not really a dealing with a lot of change person. I need things to be stable, or I'm not really a hybrid manager. I'm just not good at this hybrid managing thing. That's not me, right? It's noticing when you're saying that, and then adding the word yet. Like maybe you're not a hybrid manager yet. Maybe you don't understand AI yet. So it's, to me, growth mindset is actually noticing when you have a fixed mindset, shifting to a growth mindset. But then underneath that are these three habits: value, progress, experiment, learn from others. And these are like the three things that you want to work on to really build a growth mindset. So when we partner with an organization, we help them with making it a priority, with building these three habits, and with installing it into the systems, which ends up looking like all sorts of things, as you'll hear. We'll discuss that. But I want to give you sort of a little bit of background. Probably let's go to you. Tell us a little bit about the organization, and then I want to hear from you about kind of your journey learning growth mindset and sort of the impact that had on you. Let's hear about Terumo first of all. Give people some context.
Yeah, thanks, David. I'll be very quick on that. So Terumo is a medical devices and medical technology company. We are a company that is about 103 years old. We are publicly traded in Tokyo Stock Exchange back in Japan. Our global size is about $6 billion. We operate in more than 160 countries. Globally, we have 30,000 associates and a very, very diverse portfolio of more than 50,000 products. We have global manufacturing, 34 global manufacturing units. Our signature from day one till date has been innovation and high quality. So the company is has been very innovative on medical technology. Now, from the very beginning, from the foundation of Terumo till date, our mission, the corporate mission, has been the same: contributing to society through healthcare. So that's kind of the philosophy or the motivation that propels us. Why growth mindset is extremely important to Terumo is because we've been this, company in Japan trying to globalize, and we are going through a very large transformation, organization-wide global transformation. That transformation has three levers. One is a cultural lever. So we are going from a traditional Japanese company to a globally managed global operating system kind of a organization. The second lever is portfolio transformation. We have traditionally been a high volume, low touch kind of a commodity product line, and now we have almost pivoted to a low volume, high touch product line. So from a manufacturing driven company to a market driven company, second sort of transformation. And the third, of course, is the strategic transformation from going from products oriented company to a solutions oriented company that is predicated on creating the right delivery, digital solutions, and what we call deviceutical, bringing device and pharmaceutical entities together. So as we go through that massive transformation, you can well imagine this is like a big tanker that you're quickly trying to turn around without sinking it. So as we go through that transformation, I'm very happy that we have worked with you and NLI, today for the last 2 years or so, growth mindset is a cornerstone within Terumo, in this whole transformation.
Yeah, let's dig into that in a moment. And just a quick comment, probably if you can, I don't know if you're able to move closer to the microphone or the microphone closer to you, if that's possible at all. That might be helpful. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about growth mindset and kind of more about your experience with it, and then we'll maybe talk about kind of how we rolled this out. But you personally, as you learned these habits and the power of yet and these things, what did you find this did for you personally, and how did this impact you, as a leader?
So as I start talking about that, I think it is only natural for me to really first acknowledge and thank the NLI framework, because personally I really benefited from it. So David, if you remember, maybe you don't, you speak to too many people, but you did an address in one of our global leadership meetings. It was still COVID, the meeting was still kind of remote, but we had this opportunity of hearing you. Much has changed from that point till now. Much has changed, both personally and institutionally. And I'm very happy to be able to speak a little bit about it. Now, personally speaking, my biggest takeaway from growth mindset, the NLI framework, is this whole power of yet. The biggest, it's been life-changing for me. When I came into my current role, I came into this role my role is today a regional, sort of CEO, kind of regional enterprise leader. I came into this role from being a commercial leader in a country. So a country GM into this current role with a large transformation mandate. And I'll talk about that mandate a little later when I talk about how we applied it institutionally. But personally, we had a lot of legacy challenges. And the power of yet allowed me to get the confidence of saying that, yes, we do have a few issues, but yet have a very bright future. So that was a broad framework. And then personally, I've been away from classroom learning for a long time. And I always wanted to go back. I needed to brush up a few things, but I always had this mindset of saying, I don't have time, I don't need it. Can I really invest myself? And after I learned the power of yet from you, then I enrolled myself in formal learning, right? So I went back to school and learned and learned things like corporate governance, things that really needed to be built in my arsenal. And thirdly, I always wanted to express better in a way that not express like as I'm speaking now, but write and publish. And honestly, I was very scared to do that. I didn't know if I had that skill in me or the bandwidth in me, and my excuse was that I don't have time, right? and yet learning. I mean, once I learned the power of yet, I've
Yep.
started publishing, and it gives both the communication capability of what I can share with a much larger group of people, but also it gives me a lot of joy to be able to do that.
No, that's thank you. Thank you for sharing that very personal experience. And we hadn't talked in detail about kind of some of this earlier, so it's really delightful to hear the impact on you. And I think I share that as you learn about growth mindset, you actually are kind of encouraged almost automatically to challenge yourself to learn harder things because you see that you can. I've been learning a new language this year. That's probably the hardest I've ever learned, and I'm finally making some progress. But I had to keep reminding myself of growth mindset. I was learning to fly, and I found it such a challenging thing that I just had to keep like focusing on the progress I was making, inch by inch by inch of the progress, because it was such a difficult thing. So I think it gives you this framework to challenge yourself and to move through learning more easily. And I think as Satya Nadella from Microsoft said, we want to be an organization of learn-it-alls, not know-it-alls. And I think it gives you this framework to do that. So tell us a little bit about the journey. I'm not sure if you have a lot of these details in mind, but a little bit about the journey of kind of building the habits. Before we talk about systems, tell us a little bit about what you found kind of building these habits across the business. So adding yet, as well as value, progress, experiment, learn from others. What did you see? Maybe what was surprising as your organization learned those habits?
So if I mean, as I speak about those habits, I'll say how our priorities changed, and therefore, this priorities, habits, and systems model really helped us. I suppose there is a slide on that. If you could just go to the slide, it would help. So our priorities in the region, the next slide, please. The priorities in the region were a few. Number one, we needed to get the region back to growth. We were lagging growth, profit growth, revenue growth. We were lagging the market, and we needed to beat the market. We are an Asian company. We cannot not grow ahead of the market in Asia. So that was one priority change. And to be able to do that, we needed to change our operating systems or update our operating systems, so to say. That was the second priority. Now, those two priorities got to develop. We needed to develop different habits. First, we had this habit of being very anecdotal. We have this fly by the pant habit, right? We were 8 different entities in 8 different countries, and everybody had a different source of truth. Everybody had a different go-to business model. So in a sense, as we wanted to drive the transformation back to growth, reconfiguring into a global sort of operating system, we had to migrate to this habit of data as truth. One source of truth, information-led management.
Yeah.
Market-led information-led management. So that was one very big habit change. The second habit change was how we operated. We operated in isolation, in silos. So as we wanted to change that operating system, it was important for us to bring in transparency and to bring in collaboration.
Yeah.
Those were massive habit changes because we have not kind of worked with those principles in the past. And going through the system change, we brought in sort of a growth, efficiency, talent, culture. That's what you see as the GETC framework. We call it, so we sort of grouped ourselves and we said, we are going to drive growth. We are going to drive efficiency. We are going to be talent-led, and we are going to go through this cultural transformation all together. So this whole growth, efficiency, talent, culture framework really was a system change. And to sort of migrate to that model change, we had to really change our organization's design.
Yep.
So we had to go through creating from a single line organization, from a unilateral kind of an organization to a report line change. And we became a matrixed organization with a very clear RACI on who's responsible for what are our collaboration models. And therefore, we really needed a whole new collaboration cadence. How we spoke to each other, how often do we speak to each other? What are the rules of that game? Who's driving what? That clarity, but together. So this was done in two sort of platforms, David. One was this whole spirit of togetherness. And we actually created very early when we were having COVID, and because Terumo is, the name of Terumo comes from thermometer, Terumometer. So we took the thermometer and we actually created a Guinness Book of World Records of the maximum number of people using a thermometer in a video. So that was one sort of getting people spirited towards togetherness. So that was the spirit element. And we did many other things. But on the system element, we really defined what are our togetherness platforms, how do we collaborate together?
Yeah.
And then lastly, we brought in a whole level of automation because, if we really needed to focus on data and not be anecdotal anymore, we really needed a level of automation that is ahead of the market and not behind the market.
Yeah.
So these were some of the changes as we change those habits with the change of priorities.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's great. Let's I'm just going to take the slides off for a moment. We'll come back to them in a bit, but just to have more of a conversation. There's some great questions coming in. I wanted to address a couple of the questions in a couple of these areas. Growth mindset, for me, growth mindset is a language that once you put it in tends to stick, right? So we put it in places like 10 years ago, and it's still people like use this. How many times a week would you find probably that you say to someone, "Oh, we're not there yet," or we need to shift to a growth mindset? How many times would you say growth mindset comes up in an average week for you?
It's difficult to find numerous. I mean, innumerable times. I mean, I think it has become a common language for us.
Right. It's part of it.
And the nudges have helped, the systematization has helped. And later I will explain, what have we done to sort of take that from a concept to sort of an operating system, what tools have we built?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. So I think it's this language. We've collected data on this from about 10,000 people. And we found actually about a quarter of people find that once they learn growth mindset with us, that they apply it daily, that something happens every day where they're nudging to a growth mindset or nudge themselves or others. So we find that's really common. So it's like this language. And when you think about it, it's in the brain, it's this kind of schema or habit that you develop of noticing when something is fixed and shifting to growth, right? And what that does is it opens you up to feedback. You actually become much more curious about feedback. It opens you up to setting much bigger goals because you can get better, challenging goals. It opens you up to learning from others. So you're much more willing to learn from others. But it starts as this language that shifts you from, I can't to how can I? Or from, that's impossible to how do we? Or from, we talk about from looking good to getting better, right? Or from proving something to improving, right? And so it's really this interesting shift. And there's lots and lots of neuroscience now explaining like what happens in the brain and how powerful it is in the brain. But it's different to something like generally like continuous learning, although it results in continuous learning. It's different to a lot of things in that it's sort of foundational. In fact, I would say growth mindset is upstream from coaching, from mentoring, from training, from being an apprentice, from really anything where you're trying to help someone be better. If they have a fixed mindset, anything that you do won't really work, right? Whereas if someone has a growth mindset, it's so much easier to help them improve. So we see it as something that's upstream from any kind of change or learning initiative, across the board. That's kind of how we see it. Can you speak to that as how do you see it? Do you see it as something foundational as well?
Absolutely. It has become so much a part of our lives that we are speaking growth mindset not at work. We are speaking about it at home. I have this conversation with my son who's 11 years old, and we are talking growth mindset all the time. You know, uh, yet, and then, proof versus improve. That's become sort of a foundational language between us. Now, if you know, we are in a transformation. And because we are in a transformation, the uh, first, we are in a transformation. Second, our traditional way of work had been quite top down. So if we really want to reconfigure Terumo into the transformed self that we are trying to go to, it will require, in my opinion, from a Philharmonic style leadership to more a jazz band type leadership.
Right.
So in a way, um, when we are going through this transformation, and also COVID kind of, the pandemic, when you get to a war mode, you tend to become very directional. You tend to become very top down,
Yeah.
directive. Now, that's not sustainable, and that's not good for transformation. That for a short time is an asset, which quickly turns into a liability. So we are trying to change into this Philharmonic going to the jazz band
Right.
sort of model. And in that process, in the region, in the company, the application of growth mindset of saying, how do we improve? What do we need to improve? You know, um,
Yeah.
one
That's
one is chosen into a role because what they have done in the past. But then if you hold on to what you have done in the past, you will not fulfill that role.
right.
So it's just a figure out mode that we are trying to sort of inculcate.
Right.
Top
Right.
down, not just within my leaders, but absolutely at the last mile, front line. So as we do that, these principles of experimenting, valuing progress, and learning from others, we had to institutionalize them. We had to really convert them from concept to tools.
Yeah. Yeah, let me answer some of the questions around that. It's interesting, few people are asking, how do you build this in people? How do you develop this? The first thing is one habit at a time. So you need to build this to people over time. So generally, we'll build a growth mindset over at least 30 days in a team or even in a whole organization. And interestingly, the research on culture change is people change because they think everyone else is changing. It's actually the biggest reason people change is they believe it's everyone is doing it. So we always try when we're rolling out one of these initiatives to impact the entire organization or function, all at the same time. So that's a piece of it. And then everyone learning this one at a time. So you might start week 1 with value progress, right? Week 2 with experiment, week 3 learn from others. And what the way we approach this is we try to give people managers insights. In fact, we try to give them the strongest possible insight around, say, value progress, around like, why do you need to value progress? What does it look like? How do you do it? Give them just enough science to really make it make sense, and then get people practicing. So for example, with value progress, one of the key ideas is what we call the rule of 3, right? Every time you're talking about any sort of outcome, you're always talking about where were you, where are you going? Yeah. So someone says, oh, we delivered, 10 boxes this month. Well, how many did we deliver last month? And how did we get to this number? And what are we going to do next month? So you're always lifting up to progress. And that becomes a habit in itself, right? So you want to give managers a really good insight about the importance of value and progress, and then practice in doing this in different contexts. And we found we can do that digitally in lots of different ways, or in live workshops or virtual workshops, all sorts of things. But essentially, you've got to give lots of people an insight all at the same time about value progress, and then about experimenting, and then about learning from others. And then there are some simple steps for them to take. The learn from others is one of my favorite ones, and I'll come to you in a sec, probably, on this. That the learn from others, that we actually are not good predictors of our own potential and performance. Other people are actually much better at predicting what we're good at and what we should do differently and all this. So if we don't get other people's input a lot, we're actually missing a lot of performance, right? The only way to get other people's input really is to ask for it. And a big piece of growth mindset is learning to ask for feedback. And when you ask for feedback, we worked out it's about 50% less stressful for both the giver and the receiver. We studied this in a lab and found it's about half as stressful for both sides, which is fantastic. So asking for feedback is one of the power tools of growth mindset. It also creates psychological safety. And it's such a cornerstone of a growth mindset culture being alive. Talk about that one a little bit, probably before we get to systems. Is that something you've been applying, or you're seeing people using? Asking for feedback within the business.
Increasingly so. Increasingly so. We as we go through this whole operating model change, as we go through this whole habits change, feedback is a very important part of that, and we are doing that. Whether it is a multi-rater feedback, or it is generally at the end of every meeting saying, "Okay, what do you think? Give me some feedback." So we are seeing a big change there. And also, one of the things that we have done, David, is initially like I said, we were 8 different entities, and each entity was one identity, so to say. Thailand for Thailand, Australia for Australia, Korea for Korea. And what we did is we created sort of a micro group within Terumo, connecting all these people together on workplace. And when they were encouraged to talk about what they're doing, how they're feeling, and there was spontaneous feedback, very, very, very openly. So that was one. The other thing that I have personally gained from is that, learning from others will happen when I show up with others. Right? If I don't show up with others, or if I don't bring others into what I'm doing every day, then seeking the feedback can oftentimes be a little bit of tokenism, right? So personally, I sit on the board of a Asia Pacific Medical Technology Association, fundamentally to learn what other companies are doing. I'm showing up in several multi-industry forums so that I see what people are doing and get into a situation where I'm having to explain how we are progressing and learning from somebody else who's kind of facing the same problem. I'll give you an example. When Asia Pacific, especially Southeast Asia, was hit by the pandemic, we didn't have a playbook. We didn't have a playbook, and I couldn't go back to my headquarters and seek guidance on how to manage this. So I had to really literally call up people from different industries, from different countries, and send them a LinkedIn request or talk to people working through networks and say, how do I fix this? What do you think? How are you doing it? What I'm trying to do this. What do you think? How would you do this if you were in my place? That kind really helped us. Really helped.
Fantastic. Thank you. So just a quick answer to some of the questions here. I talked a little bit about a practical thing you can do around value progress. A practical thing around learn from others is definitely asking for feedback. And we found when you ask well, people give it well, and you get so much more feedback that way. It's really powerful. Around experiment, it's interesting where people are actually unconscious of what they're doing about half the time. About half the time of our waking life, we're actually not aware of what we're doing. So, with experimenting, it's proactively trying different things, even if they're very small, being really open to making mistakes. At NLI, we have what we call a mistake of the month, where we share the dumbest thing that happened and what we learned from it. So priming people to know that mistakes are necessary for learning, encouraging experimentation, and really making that part of the culture has been a big thing. Let's change gears a bit. One of the reasons I wanted to invite you on here was I was really impressed with the systems thinking that you did around embedding growth mindset into the organization. And your organization's Asia-wide, so complex, many languages, many cultures, complex industry. But you were able to think really creatively and do experiments around growth mindset itself. And I wonder if you can talk to that a little bit. I'll put this up on screen. Yeah, so talk to the experiments that you did, and sort of how you wove growth mindset itself into your systems.
So when you spoke about growth mindset, and when we at a corporate level were looking at experimenting, valuing progress, and learning from others as sort of a maxim, I started thinking in terms of how to operationalize that. I love concepts, but I like to put them to use. Now, put them to use, anecdotally will give some result, but putting them to use in institutional form perhaps would give more. So what we did was kind of simple, very simple. We had this complexity of isolation. We had also the complexity of being top down. So if we needed to change, people were on a soldier mode, seeking instruction, right? So to be able to sort of disrupt that mindset and to encourage people to experiment. It's okay to fail, but fail quickly.
Right.
Right? To bring in that, we created what we call in our region, we call it a program called the Seed Fund for Big Tree.
Okay.
Now, it's fundamentally a internal, entrepreneurial sort of a venture fund. It's a very small initiative. In a way, we are going to people and saying, all of you can come with any idea. It doesn't have to be linked to the department that you are in or the work that you do during your, as a job. Whatever you think can be improved, whatever you think you are motivated to improve, put it, pitch it, and we will run it through sort of a discussion, open discussion.
Right.
Right? And we will not be very critical about what's the success possibility. Okay. As long as it seems important, or it seems inspiring, or it seems
right
enough.
I remember when we talked last time, you told me there was a certain number the first round, and then it broke through. What was those numbers the first time you did this, and then the second time?
The first time it was, I think, 8 or 9 people, and then it became over 100 people, and now we are going for the third round. It's going to become even bigger. So the idea is that invite and I think it has become bigger because people initially did not have the validation that what we are saying we will really behave like that.
Right. How much did you end up funding? How many projects did you end up funding so far? I know it's just been going
30, 40 projects,
wow.
Many. Yeah. And these are small funding. So the whole idea is come with a project. As long as we get a green light, simple, everybody gets together. Hey, this looks important. I give you $5,000, no question asked. You don't have to return capital. You don't have to show me success of that $5,000. If that $5,000, you can build a prototype or an idea or whatever, collaboration, you come back and show some promise, then we will fund it bigger. Then it will become one of our mainstream business or function initiatives. If you don't, as long as you have come back and openly shared, what did I learn from that mistakes? Right. David, I picked it up from you. I blatantly steal stuff when I find them good. We started this quarterly mistakes award.
Great.
So we got the mistakes learned award. And either people are experimenting through the seed fund for Big Tree, getting some success, getting some validation, and helping us turn bigger or better, or they're learning from their mistakes and getting recognized. And initially, I think the first year, there were 2 or 3 mistakes award claimants. Today, we have everybody talking about the mistakes. So this whole culture has moved from being failure averse to
Right.
embracing honest failure. It's okay. I tried, didn't work. I learned something. I move on.
I
And
love that. I love that. I mean, I think putting your money where your mouth is and the commitment as well of funding 30 or 40 initiatives is really nice. And then the mistakes learned. How do you evaluate who deserves the award, the mistakes learned award? That was one of the questions that came in.
we don't put yet. We are not putting too much evaluation.
Okay.
We want to be encouraging for people to really talk about mistakes more freely. And if you see Asia, the traditional Southeast Asian or Japanese or in many countries, you don't really like to make mistakes, right? You're
Yeah.
not incentivized for mistakes. We are trying to change that whole term of engagement of saying mistakes are great, fun. Oh, So at this point in time, as long as
Right.
we see as a group, we see the person has or the group has learned something from that mistake, or they're talking about how they are learning from that mistake.
Right.
Think
Right.
the mistakes about not
Yeah, I think over I think it would be bad to over index on assessing mistakes to some degree. It would be counterintuitive. Um, but yeah, I love the concept. Yeah, we do it monthly. We don't do it every month. We might miss some. We have so it's sort of an informal thing and as part of our all hands meeting. We have mistake of the month. And
Yeah.
we usually have 3 or 4 people that kind of share a brief story, when we're all on a platform and we'll have a winner. There's no formal prize, but some status. I try to be in there any month that we do it. I try to share some dumb things that I've done. There's always something, and I uh, I find it's important for the leader to share, their own journey as well. So yeah, I really like the way that you thought about the systems here, and then also investing in mentoring around learning from others. You've really brought alive these specific things. So let me take a couple more questions, and then we'll probably start to wrap up. But let's a couple of interesting questions that are coming in here. I think there's a general theme around sort of how do you how do you embed this in people? How do you really bring this alive in people? And what if people don't have a growth mindset? And I think there's always a danger of weaponizing this idea of sort of finger pointing. You got to be careful of that. But what have you found has been most helpful for sort of getting people on board with the idea, particularly maybe those who don't have a growth mindset? What have you found works?
So first things first, I have not found anybody without growth mindset.
Okay.
I have always found some people. I mean, it's a mixture. You have one has growth mindset, one has fixed mindset. I've never, I believe I have not found a pure fixed mindset or a pure growth mindset person. So, and that belief of mine, when applied, yeah, then it takes away. I speak about where my fixed mindsets are and how I'm trying to overcome them. And I think that really takes a lot of pressure away.
Yeah.
That's point number one. Point number two, I found it very necessary and quite rewarding if we really talked about it very frequently, almost like it is a religion, right? So very frequently, the nudges, the small little snippets, the little visual confirmations, going on workplace, going on email, it being your screensaver,
Right.
communicating on the theme of growth mindset almost as a default.
Yeah.
Not almost, actually as a default. And number three, really putting those people, like on that slide, you will see, we are in a procedure, we help doctors perform angioplasty through the wrist, and there is a salesperson developing sort of a device to help the surgeon do that. Now, that's not his job. He's not a product designer, but he did it, right? And you gave him those $5,000, he came back with something and it worked, right? Or there are the regulatory department, and in medical devices, the regulatory departments and the folks tend to be quite operating within boundaries. Now, here is this lady who created a chat bot to support, product failure submission. So the whole idea is when you put them on the pedestal, put them on the pedestal, put them on the pedestal, put them on the pedestal again, then it creates a whole role modeling of
Right.
many people, collective role modeling, not just one or two people,
Right. Yeah, you've got 30 or 40 projects happening that are true experiments and really exploring things. I mean, I think that has such a profound effect on the culture over time, and shows people, what's really possible. So I think, going back to PHS, priorities, habits, and systems, you've been speaking about growth mindset a lot. You've been talking about it, bringing it alive lots of ways. You worked with us to build the habits across the business. I know we did some learning that impacted everyone at a similar time. And then you did some great work internally to embed these systems. And I think it's the combination of those three that have really changed things. I was in Singapore seeing you a few months back. I also went to another medical device company, Becton Dickinson. You must know BD. We also did some
I
growth.
used to work for BT.
Oh, there you go. We also did growth mindset work with them across the globe, and I was dropping in to see you. I was also dropping in to see them, and in both cases, I was able to spend some time with the organizations, and it was fascinating. In both organizations, there was this real like curiosity and openness and like hunger to experiment and try ideas, and it was really refreshing. And on the same week, I went to visit a number of other companies. We hadn't done this work, and it was such a stark difference in just people's openness and willingness to even just ask questions and lean in and suggest things. And I think what this work does is it creates an openness and a curiosity that pushes against kind of the some of the downsides of organizations and scaling and structure. It creates an openness and a willingness to kind of do things differently. So I want to really appreciate your courage and openness and willingness to kind of try this idea in your organization. And I know that you've inspired a lot of people to step up and experiment more and learn more. And one of the wonderful things about this is it has an effect on our personal lives as well, on our relationship with our kids and our partners and everything else. So it's this wonderful life skill as well. So I appreciate you. Any closing comments before we wrap up, and I'll hand back to Kendra. Any closing comments to wrap up on kind of this project overall?
In a way, my closing comment is going to be on impact, David, because at the end of the day, we are in a marketplace, and while I have really seen the impact of growth mindset on our results, right? So we were low single digit growth 3-4 years ago. We are doing near double digit growth already, right? So we are growing. We are growing 2.5x the market, right?
Yeah.
So that was a very, very quick impact. Now we were able to do some very major portfolio transformations because of the power of yet, saying that okay, it's risky. We have not done it, but yet we can give it a shot. Maybe in one entity with one product. Let's give it really help. And our overall collaboration index is improved. I'd be very honest with you. 4 or 5 years back, we couldn't have imagined it. But 6 of our 7 entities very recently got certified as Great Place to Work. So whether it is motivation, engagement, outcome, results, strategy, we are seeing the impact of growth mindset everywhere. For me, that's the proof of the pudding.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the proof of the pudding is in the eating, they say, and that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. And the last piece I wanted to speak in the conclusion is how surprised I am. I'm really amazed with how simple this tool is. How simple, if we can operationalize it with a little bit of commitment, we can really do magic. It's like a beautiful tool that is just sitting there to be used. It's so simple, and how much people can do when they really embrace the power of it.
Yeah.
So those are the two sort of concluding remarks that I would leave.
That's fantastic. So simple and yet so powerful and so far reaching, with so many implications to individuals and their performance and organizational performance. And we saw that 10 years ago, and we really, made a serious commitment to make this a big practice for us. And we've been really glad that we did. Prabir, thank you so much for your time and energy and passion. I know you inspired a lot of people. You inspired me when we talked about this a year ago, and I'm so happy that we invited you here. Thanks so much for being here. Wish you all the best with your journey. I look forward to sharing space when I'm back in Singapore next time. And wish you all the best for 2024. Kendra, I'll hand back to you. Everyone else, take care of yourselves, look after each other, keep doing what matters, and look forward to connecting again. Thanks so much. Back to you, Kendra.
Yeah, thank you both. Prabir, such wonderful learning in the Asian context, and we've had so many questions come through, and I apologize, folks, in the limited time we've been busy in the background trying to answer as many as we could. If you would like some more information, let me show you how you can access that. What we might do is launch a quick poll so that the team can get back to you and book meetings with you that for those of you that are interested. So I'll launch that now, or you can just type in the chat if that's easier for you. If you'd like to know more about our Grow solution and how you can operationalize growth mindset in your organization, let us know. If you're interested in LEAD, the neuroscience of effective management, our first cohort is due to start in February 15. So we're very excited to be bringing that to you. Some of the practical guides in this program are excellent. It has all of our best models in it. If you're interested in our next webinar, we're making David work while he's here. We're leveraging his time in this time zone. So David will be back on February 2nd. That's Friday, February 2nd at 12 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. So you can register via the QR code there. The team might pop a link in the chat if that's easier for you to access. So that again will be just under an hour. We have brain-based coaching returning in person in Sydney. I'll have the pleasure of delivering this program, this 3-day, what I believe is a transformational program. So it's our signature program that we've been training for 25 years. It's been iterated and developed. And if you're looking to learn with people in the classroom again, then there are still spaces in Sydney. Would love to see you there. We also want to keep in touch, so please do email us at asia@neuroleadership.com. You can request a meeting with us and continue to explore what's on offer, and tune into our podcasts. We'd love to see you there as well. Thank you all for choosing to spend your time with us. We look forward to seeing you in another webinar soon, or in one of our programs soon. Take care and stay